lives locally. She lives in Granger, Indiana. She speaks internationally. She's an amazing, amazing resource. We're just lucky to have her in our area here. And I'm so glad you're speaking here in Elkhart tonight. Dr. Corson is a graduate of Yale University, class of 1996. She was
76.
What did I say, 96?
I am young, though.
She's very young. I didn't know I was going to get up and do this evening. She was the chief resident, family medicine residency at the University of Rochester, New York, from 1978 to 1989, which is actually where I went to college, a sister college at the University of Rochester. She was a member of the U.S. Public Health Service, the National Health Service Corps, 5 years in rural North Carolina. The past decade, she spent working in prevention at the Integrative Medicine and Chronic Illness Improvement or Reversal of Disease. She's the medical consultant in integrative medicine in the 1990s and also worked at the Healing Arts Center on the River in Mishawaka, Indiana. She's also the medical editor for the publication Medicinal Plants of North America by Jim Munich, a 2008 publication. And she now currently is a community educator, frequent lecturer on environmental and health issues nationally. So thank you, Dr. Candace Corson, for being here tonight. Can't wait to hear your presentation.
Thanks, Andy. Thank you so much. Can people hear me at the back of the room? Thank you. Good, okay. When I was a little girl, my mother used to say, you know, you have such a soft voice, sweetie. She said, you know, you need to project so people can hear you. And I really never learned to do that until I had my own 4 little boys. And when they were little and they would run in the road, I learned to project really fast. Get out of the road to save their lives. We'll do anything for our kids, won't we? And that's really a growing up time. Well, we're really here to talk about our own health and that of the people that we love and care about. Our family, our friends, our nation, and really a worldwide challenge that we have, which is our health is going downhill at an alarming rate, and the science is very clear on how we can turn that around in safe, powerful, and simple ways. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So first I want to applaud you for taking your time here in early autumn. There are about 100 other things I'm sure you could be doing tonight, so thank you for taking your time. It really shows that you're dedicated to health and education and learning. So I hope you will be able to take something home that's of value to you tonight. I also want to thank my husband, George Knowles, for being our tech person. Thank you so much, because this wouldn't be happening like this if you weren't here. And Diane Graffis, who lives in Elkhart and is a Juice Plus representative that we love very much, for really coordinating, kicking off this whole event and making it happen here at Hilton Garden. So thank you, Diane. So today we're going to talk about our health and really looking at the nutritional piece of it. And we'll see, I have to aim it at the right place. There we go. So the colors of life are actually the actual protectors of life. The colored molecules that are in plants, vegetables, that the whole plant kingdom, are actually the chemicals that, it's going by itself, that, let me give you this or do something. He's so good at this. But I can talk without him, but I just love these slides I put together. And I just want to take a minute to just say I'm not paid anything to give this talk or any other talks. There are many, many health professionals across the United States and Canada and 20 other countries that give the same kind of talk, but each one we have our own talk. There's no set talk. We each speak from our experience, and that's because we are concerned and we're excited about turning our nation's health around. As a country, we actually spend more on what we call health care, but it's really sick care, if that makes sense, than any other nation in the world. We're now spending upwards of $8,000 per capita. That means every child, every man, every woman, every baby. If you count all of us, we're spending over $8,000 a piece every year, and it's rising rapidly. And yet our health, the state of our health is declining. So I'm going to go through some bad news with you, but then the point is good news. That's what we're here about tonight. If it was all bad news, I'd just stay home and be in my garden and do some other things until it gets dark tonight, and then do some other fun things. Be on Facebook and find out what my sons are up to, all that kind of stuff. Thank you, honey. So what we're going to talk about tonight is the plant kingdom. Isn't that nice architecture? Just amazing. Now here's the state of our health. The media is doing a good job of reporting how bad it really is. The sorry state of American health, and despite advances in medicine, we actually have the next generation now expected to not live as long of a life expectancy as their parents, and that's the first time in history. I like this Time magazine, How Not to End Up Here. It's all about prevention. The first step towards containing our healthcare costs is to avoid getting sick, and here's what it takes. Nutrition is the centerpiece, and here are the facts. We have 1 in 3 baby girls born today will develop cancer in her lifetime. Do you feel like that is acceptable? 1 in 3 baby girls, and if it's a boy, it's a lot worse. It's 1 out of every 2. So half of all men will develop cancer in his lifetime. It doesn't have to be that way, and we know how to turn this around. We have a skyrocketing situation with diabetes, not only in adults, but in children as young as age 3 and 4. This is the old-fashioned, what we used to call adult onset diabetes. We now call it type 2 because that's what we have to call it since it's happening to little kids. And it's not their genes, it's what our nutrition is doing to their genes, switching good ones off and switching bad ones on. And here is really something. Over 2/3 of us now are overweight. Now here's a photograph that used to be on the wall in my family practice office, and it's a rare photo of hips in the larva stage. And that is donuts. I don't say what brand because it really doesn't matter. It's just the donut itself. What it's made out of is really hard on human chemistry. But it tastes so good, doesn't it, when you get started? And you know, what do they bring the ER docs? My husband was an emergency doc 30 years. When they thank them, or the ER nurses, they bring donuts, and they're usually gone in about 5 minutes. Well, this is how confused we are today in America about nutrition. The Japanese eat very little fat and have less heart disease than British or Americans. That's true. They drink very little red wine, but they have less heart disease. The French seem to drink a lot of red wine and still have less heart disease than Americans or British. So here's the conclusion. Eat or drink whatever you want, because apparently speaking English is what kills you. And that's really how confused it is. There is a lot of misinformation out there. Some of it is on purpose because of very huge market forces. We call it disinformation, which is misinformation on purpose. It's no one person's fault, but there are huge market forces that make it confusing for us to find out what is good for us to eat. But actually science is not confused on it. And here again, some good portrayals of what's happening. This little girl has full-blown adult onset diabetes. She's only 11 and dealing with a chronic illness that will cut her life short. And it costs a lot of money that we can't afford. Look at this. By the age of 12, an estimated 70% of our children have the first stage of heart disease. That's by autopsy. And 1 in 3 Americans born in 2000, so those kids are now 11, will have diabetes young in life. And the estimation is about 1/3 or more of them will have diabetes by the year 2030. And if they were born in 2000, how old would they be? 30 years old. So they would be young. And that's the trajectory that we're on already. And that problem right there, diabetes in our young people, will bankrupt the United States. And there's no one who would argue with that. We have so many other problems that we have, all the problems that we think about. This problem of diabetes will bankrupt the United States. So wouldn't it be fun and empowering to know that science knows how to turn this around? It's a matter of education, which is what we're all about, and political will to do so. But I think it's mostly education and what we do, what we put into our bodies, what we buy at the grocery store and what we put into our bodies. Now this fact at the bottom, I'll read it to you, is really huge. Over 93% of all of our children, and that's our teenagers too, 93% of them do not consume the recommended absolute minimum of 3 servings of vegetables per day. Actually, 3 servings is not enough. But 93%, are we taking that in, are not getting that. So it means almost all of our children have a form of malnutrition that we call micronutrition. That's the small little amounts of thousands and thousands of plant chemicals that make our body healthy, that take away inflammation, that reduce our risk of cancer. We're flat out missing them. And what we have is high-calorie malnutrition. High-calorie malnutrition, and it's making us very sick, and it's also making us inflamed, and we really don't feel very good. So all of these things combined together, I call it the perfect storm. We have not drinking enough water, lack of exercise, a lot of stress. We have environmental factors that no generation has ever faced, hundreds of thousands of foreign-to-nature chemicals that we have inadvertently put into our bodies by putting them into the air. the air cycle, the water cycle, which then becomes the oceans, the rivers, and of course the land. And that's where our food comes from, which makes our body. So we have obligatory toxic burden that no generation has had. And the younger you are, the more of it you have. We really need to turn that around, wouldn't you say? And in the meantime, the thing we can do is, be aware and care about that, make our voices heard, but also we need to get the immediate protection in now, and that's the plant kingdom. I'm going to show you why that is. Sleep deprivation. How many people have ever experienced sleep deprivation? Yes. And how many people know or have been night workers or shift workers? How many people? Yeah. And it causes people to gain weight. Have you ever noticed that? And it's not just because they may be eating more from the stress, but it's actually, even if they ate the same calories, it's called metabolic obesity. And it's caused by the elevation of our stress hormones like cortisol because our sleep has been interfered with. So our body is feeling under fight or flight, it's feeling under attack, so it's hanging on to more energy to deal with that. Does that make sense? So you can eat the same calories and gain weight, and that's simply by having sleep deprivation. We see that a lot in nurses and doctors and any kind of shift workers. And then our approach to medicine is just, well, we'll just treat it. We'll fix everything instead of prevent it. Problem is, it doesn't work very well. Not only is it super expensive, but it's not really the ultimate healing of the body. It just doesn't work with trying to fix it when it's late. And if you try to fix it with drugs alone or drugs and surgery alone, there's a time and place for those, but if that's all you're using, you're not going to have a good outcome. And you're going to have a ton of side effects and early deaths. And that's what we're seeing, and we can turn that around. And of course, at the top of the pile, you see poor food choices. And I would submit that all of these are not due to laziness. They are not due to laziness. Americans are very hardworking, very industrious, and I really think it's due to a lot of stress and a lot of demands on people's time and a food supply that's just shockingly insufficient. Now, this is a neat article, Why Your DNA is Not Your Destiny. And the new science of epigenetics reveals how the choices you make can change your genes. It changes how your genes express themselves. So without even breaking them, we can break our genes by just not having enough greens. If you have folic acid deficiency, the #1 deficiency in the United States, that's from not enough greens. It's foliage or folia, the Latin word for leaf, is where we get folic acid from. And when you have a deficit of that, which is the #1 deficit in the United States, you have a deficit of the whole leaf, the whole plant kingdom, not just one vitamin. That's why multivitamins won't solve that. But if you just don't have enough of that one nutrient from your greens, then these little places here get broken, just as if you stood in front of an X-ray machine. One of the greatest scientists who's been nominated for a Nobel Prize, Bruce Ames, has said, just to not eat enough of your greens is the same as standing in front of an X-ray machine unprotected. How many of us would say, yeah, just X-ray me all day? We wouldn't allow that, would we? We wouldn't allow our children to be X-rayed. But we're doing the same thing and causing gene breakage, strand breakage, which leads to our immediately mutations and then cancer, where our cancer cells come from, as well as cells that just aren't working and dying too soon and not replacing right. But above that, here's what's really exciting too, is on top of this, meaning epi on top of, epigenetics is the new field, is where the genes, let's say we don't even break them. We do break them all the time, but above that, these genes, the good ones, have switches on and off. We do that with nutrition. So you can have genes that aren't even broken, but they're not working because they don't have the nutrients to make them work right. And that's pretty powerful stuff because we can solve that. So this emerging field is called epigenetics, on top of the genes, switching genes on and off. And it's not about what our genes do to us as much as it is what are we doing to our genes. So it's really important. Now here's the fact. Our government, our tax dollars, we've spent billions trying to find cures for heart disease and cancer and inflammation, arthritis, and so forth. And the science has shown it actually works much better. Not only is it easier, but it works better to prevent and help the body to form itself right and protect itself right than it does to try to reverse this end-stage damage. So the science from over 5,000 studies around the world has shown that the single biggest determinant of your health, and including cancer risk, is how many different veggies and fruits you get every day. That's how powerful they are. So the current recommendation is 7 to 13 servings of vegetables and fruits every day. Not just Saturday, which would be great if everybody did that on Saturday, wouldn't it? But every day. And the problem is almost no one does. And this 13 is for anyone with a history, a family history of disease, anyone that's already had a medical problem, anyone who's an athlete, and that probably fits most people in this room, have had some kind of either family history or some kind of tap on the shoulder with some kind of illness. We're in the 13 category, and Canada's looking at raising it to 16 different veggies and fruits a day. 7 is just for little kids who don't know they have a family history and are not athletes and are super healthy. So they can get away with a little bit less because they don't have as much damage accumulating every hour. Does that make sense? The more damage you have, the more you need this protection, because it's the only true protection for the body. So I love this. It's brand new. After I don't know how many hundreds of hours of debate, the new USDA food guideline is, you can see it at a website called www.choosemyplate.gov, or you can just go to myplate.gov or powerplate.gov. That's a government website. Look at that. Over half your plate is fruits and veggies. And actually, if you talk about grains, and they're not talking about white rice and pasta here, talking about whole grains, brown rice, whole oatmeal, that kind of thing. If you look at all of these, the whole grains, the fruits and veggies, would you not say that's more than 3/4 of your plate is from plant foods from the earth, correct? And so that's the way that our ancestors ate, and that's the way our genes are programmed to be. And so it's all about how do we get this percentage way, way up higher? Because most people are eating a tiny fraction, if any. Did you know at one time, in my memory, kids at school in the lunch program, that ketchup was a veggie, classified as a veggie? Oh my, we won't go there. And French fries make up the bulk of what they call veggie in the school programs for many kids. And they're not even a vegetable. They are carbohydrate storage from tubers of potatoes, and then when they're fried, we won't even go there. Now, this is the real key, is why are plants so important for protecting our bodies? And it's because our chemistry of our body is made from plant chemistry. Even if we eat animals, their chemistry is supposed to be made of plant chemistry. The more it's not, the more it's made of things they weren't supposed to be made out of, the sicker we are. And the more our food is not plant food, the sicker we are. And the higher our bills, and the more our suffering, and the lower our life expectancy. So it's pretty exciting stuff. And you know, a good demonstration of this is people talk a lot about eating fish. Well, fish are not the only way that you need to get your good fats, your omega-3s. You don't have to use fish or fish oil at all to get your good fats. They can come all from plants, and that's what I do. But the bottom line is, even if you're trying to get those good fats, and you're growing your fish in farms where you're feeding them, what are they feeding them?
Corn.
Corn, yes. Corn is, do you think fish are supposed to eat corn every day? So corn is a cheap way to capture the sun's energy, which, thank you, the corn does that, but it doesn't allow the omega-3s to come into the fish's body and concentrate. Where do the omega-3s come from? In either fish or cows or chickens. They don't make them, they just concentrate them. It comes from seaweed, exactly. Seaweed in the ocean, which is the bulk of the plant mass in this world. It's also where all of our oxygen comes from. And yeah, don't worry, I'll just keep talking. But the omega-3s are important for our brain. Every cell membrane is made out of them, if we're made out of the right stuff. And if we're not made out of that, every messenger in the body doesn't work right. So you can throw every drug you want. I've seen people on, gigantic doses of drugs and they're not working. Let's say 200 milligrams of Prozac, that's a huge dose. And I'm not saying not to use that drug, but when you're using that big of a dose and it's not working, you got to wonder, is it just because the cell membrane can't even accept any level of neurotransmitter? It just won't work until the fats are the right composition, because that makes the cell membrane work right. So bottom line, if you're going to try to get your omega-3 fats, you want to get them either directly from the plants, which would be things like walnuts, avocados, flax seeds. Anybody use flax, F-L-A-X? It's a great way. All the good health food stores have flax seeds, whole flax seeds. They're little tiny, kind of the size of a sesame seed, only a little thinner. And they have a great type of fiber that reduces prostate cancer risk in men. and breast cancer risk in men and women. You know, men are getting breast cancer today. Everyone understand, you know that. This should not be happening to anybody, but we're seeing more and more of that. So when you use the kind of fiber that's in flax seeds, you reduce the risk of cancer, but you also get good omega-3s. They're very inexpensive, way less expensive than any kind of, say, fish oil, and they're not contaminated. They're grown organically, and they don't have the poisons that we've dumped on our lawns, which end up in the fish everywhere. So that's really a neat thing, is that our seaweed is where the omega-3s are made, and that's what the fish concentrate. But see, it's the same on land. If anyone ever raised free-range chickens or bought free-range eggs, anyone ever bought free-range eggs? Did they look really nice and golden in the inside?
No.
And taste good? No?
They don't look dark.
Oh, well, we'll have to talk about where your poor chickens are eating.
All
Because
right.
if they're eating plants, if they're free-pecking plants, they're going to have a very dark golden interior, which is your actually carotenes that are concentrated from those plants. Very nice for you. So chickens and bison, buffalo, cattle that are eating green plants, which would be hay, right, not corn. They're lean, are they not? And they're not only lean, but the fat they do have is mostly omega-3. So it's a really big difference how we feed those animals. Well, so it is with us. And so what I want to talk about next is why the plants have the protection for our body. Because even if you eat good fats, I see a lot of people go, my doctor put me on omega-3, I'm taking omega-3. That's nice, but that's not the most important part of the story. The most important part of the story is how high can you get your protective plant level in your bloodstream. Different species every day. It's the vegetables, the fruits, and then those special fruits that are very dark black, purple, blue, which we happen to call them berries, right? They are a special kind of fruit that has those dark purple colors. And actually, if you call your attention here for a moment, this is from a teacher's website called The Learning Zone, and it's just got a great portrayal of the real food we need to be eating in that rainbow of colors. And you'll see it goes all the way from the white of garlic and cauliflower to the dark purple of the berries, the blueberries, and the dark kale. So isn't that a nice looking rainbow? Now what's fun about that, thank you, that's perfect, is this is really huge. This is the centerpiece here. When you eat food of any kind, and especially fats, any fat, including the super good fats, they're very delicate. When you eat them, they go right into your bloodstream, where they should, and there they encounter a real problem. If you do not have your shield on board, it's like Star Trek with a complete shield of antioxidants, they will oxidize first and fastest in your body. Oxidize means rusted, rancid, toxic, dangerous. And what happens is you literally have, you can almost imagine shards of glass inside of your arteries. Would you want that? That's what is happening. That's why 3% of our 3-year-olds today have the stages of hardening the arteries already visible on autopsy, and 70% by age 12. And one of the people I went to college with at Yale became a cardiologist, and he stopped his practice to write a book on this. And he assures me that it's upwards of 90% have the first stage of heart disease by the time they're 18. This is ridiculous. And the fun part is that it's reversible at that stage. So what you're doing, what we're doing, is when we eat any kind of fat, and we have to have them, they make our cell membrane, or any other kind of food, it will immediately combine with oxygen. We breathe oxygen, we burn our fuel deep inside the cell in a power pack called what is that wonderful thing called? The mitochondrion, because we're talking about mitochondria. The mitochondrion is a power pack, I call it the power pack, inside the cell. And our cells literally burn our fuel, which we've eaten, and combine it with oxygen, which we've breathed, and you literally produce energy, the energy of life. That's the only way you can be alive. It's really quite amazing. But when we do that, it's an equation, and there only is one way that it works. There are sparks that are damaging, which are electrons, which are peeled off to make the energy, and then you have unstable molecules. And has anyone heard the term free radicals? That's what free radicals are. They're caused by the stripping off of electrons to get the energy for our body, almost like electricity, but by doing that, there's damaging, you might call it smoke when you burn a fire. and it's called free radicals. And it doesn't just sort of happen sometimes, it happens continuously. So every time you breathe, and every time you eat, and every time you get a minute to be alive, you're throwing off free radicals. Now, how many are there? This is amazing. When you're not sick, and you're not too extra stressed, and you're not taking a bunch of extra chemicals in your body, when you're just at baseline, it's about 10,000 hits of oxidation damage or free radical hit to your body per day. But it gets better. It's 10,000 hits per day per cell in your body. 10,000 hits per day per cell. And that's where our aging cells come from, too rapidly aging. It's where our cancers come from. It's where cells come from that no longer work anymore because they're damaged. Because what happens is the free radical is unstable, and it will stabilize itself immediately by pulling an electron to become stable. It pulls it from anything. It pulls it from your DNA, thereby causing strand breakage, where your genes aren't even right anymore. If it pulls it from your skin, you get wrinkles. If it pulls it from your joints, you get arthritis and inflammation. Does that make sense? So it's rapid aging. We are supposed to not live forever, but we're not supposed to age that way that we are today in America. Now, here's the really great part. I think this is exciting. When you have a free radical and it's in the fat, and that's the first thing to oxidize. So it makes me sad when I hear people say, I just started my omega-3 fats. My doctor put me on fish oil. Now, I'm not saying the doctor was wrong, but you really don't want to do that until your plant shield is in place. You do the plant shield first. It's the first thing you do. And you're getting enough fats anyway. I promise you, everybody is. So when you focus only on the fats, you're not going to go anywhere but down. But peroxidation of a lipid or a fat is as bad for you as peroxidation of water. So our body is about 70% water, and that's a great thing, but it's only a little step chemically to turn it into one more oxygen. Oxidized water is H2O2. What is H2O2? Anybody know? Hydrogen peroxide. So we need to drink at least 8 ounces of glasses of water a day, minimum, but do we need to drink any hydrogen peroxide? The answer is no. So that's how big of a difference it is. It's the difference between water and hydrogen peroxide is the same as between, let's say, HDL or LDL, any cholesterol, which will not hurt you, and the oxidized form, which will hurt you by being those shards of glass in your artery. Does that make sense? It's the oxidized portion that hurts you. And that's not what the current drug industry is addressing. It's just addressing the total amount. So I won't go down that road, but I will say you want to stop oxidizing your whole body, and you want to stop oxidizing your fats. There's only one way to do it. And here is why. It is the plant kingdom. The only source of antioxidants, which protects you, is the plant kingdom. It has been shown now in huge studies, thousands of people, the doctors study, the nurses study, where people for years submitted their information. Multivitamins will not reduce your risk of cancer or heart disease, not by 0.5%, not by any amount at all. They do not work. They do not work to create health, and they're no longer recommended by health experts. The only time when an isolated vitamin is useful is when you have a very specific, profound loss, which your doctor would diagnose. Like someone who's been bleeding too much. They would need the mineral called iron, and that's a prescription, right? Along with good nutrition. Someone who doesn't absorb their B12 because they have an autoimmune target in their stomach is pretty common, and it's called pernicious anemia. They can't absorb the B12 they eat. They have a deficiency there. That's a great thing to get treated by the doctor with either B12 shots or B12 little tablet that you can melt under your tongue so it goes in your bloodstream. You really don't need the shots then, and you can ask the doctor about that. But that would be a specific deficiency you're treating, if that makes sense. But to do a little tiny handful of man-made or isolated vitamins that we think are important out of the food, the data is in, it doesn't work. What works is the whole food, and that's why the American Cancer Society has this poster. This is their official poster, it's the American Cancer Society. Fruits and vegetables, that's how you decrease your risk of cancer. And every cancer society in the world, what their recommendation is, not multivitamins, it's fruits and vegetables. And that's the reason why. Here's their pledge, and you notice it's in order. The Fight Back pledge against cancer. Number 1, eat right with fruits and vegetables. Number 2, stay active. And number 3, quit smoking. Does anyone in here think that smoking is, that's not important to quit smoking? you know, we know it's important to try to not smoke and be exposed to the secondhand smoke, but the most important thing is our fruits and vegetables. We need to do both of those things. And if you had to rank them, isn't that interesting where they rank as far as how powerful? That's from 5,000 studies showing the single most powerful predictor whether we get cancer or not is how many different veggies and fruits we get every day over the long haul. Is that important? Now these are the conditions that we know are associated from whole food deficit, whole food meaning whole plants. You recognize any of these among people that you know and love? Alzheimer's, the highest rate in the world is in the United States. 1 new case every 40 seconds. Macular degeneration, which is destruction of part of the eye in the back, the #1 cause of blindness in our people over 65. Depression, all kinds of thinking disorders, ADD, ADHD, high blood pressure, heart disease, immune problems. We have an epidemic of autoimmune diseases that we did not have when I was in my training. Lupus used to be very, very rare. It's now common. The same with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. The same with MS. Used to be pretty rare when I was in my training. And it's becoming quite common. Asthma is just skyrocketing worldwide. Infections, rapid infections that kill people. They're vulnerable by not having good immune function. Diabetes, we've talked about, just escalating rapidly. Cancer, we have an epidemic of that. And then toxemia or preeclampsia or pregnancy is our #1 cause of babies and moms getting into really severe problems with the pregnancy that can end in death very rapidly, and also massive healthcare costs for that to happen. This is a nutritional problem. And degenerative joint disease and protein damage in athletes that's permanent due to the high level of oxidative stress. So these are the things that have been shown when you concentrate the veggies and fruits and you use that concentrated juice. These are the things that have been shown in study after study to happen, where it's going into the bloodstream very, very well. It's reducing that oxidative stress, which is our aging phenomenon. It is supporting a balanced immune system that works more correctly, and you're protecting your DNA from fragmenting. You're also having your gene switches work properly. And then looking at heart wellness, inflammation going down. Wouldn't that be nice to have less inflammation in your body? And then protecting muscles from the permanent protein damage that people undergo when they're doing exercise, especially the elite athletes. And all of these things have been shown with this concentrated form of nutrition that is called Juice Plus. It is the most thoroughly researched nutraceutical, which is a nutrition product for health, in history, by far. There are now 22 peer-reviewed university studies that are not done by the company. They're done by individual researchers or research institutions that specialize in certain areas of health. It may be DNA, that the whole thing that they do their whole life is only DNA research, or it may be the immune system, or it may be heart and blood vessel wellness. And this came to my attention, the Juice Plus concentrate. It's dry juice powder concentrate. And usually people use it in a capsule form because it's very convenient to swallow the capsule of dry juice, which then becomes juice with water quickly at body temperature, because the capsule melts right away and you have water in your system, but you also should be drinking water, and you've got quickly absorption of these fabulous juiced nutrients fresh from the fields, vine ripened, into the bloodstream where they're needed. The first blend that was developed, these first two, the Orchard blend, is these specific 7 fruits. They're all grown to full ripeness. If you can imagine getting this every day, what your body could do with it: apples, oranges, pineapple, cranberries, peaches, acerola cherries, and papaya. They're all different colors, all different pigments, all different enzymes, and they overlap for protection. And then the garden blend, which we call the greens: carrot, parsley, beets, kale, broccoli, cabbage, spinach, tomato, and then the outer fiber only of oats and bran, or oat bran and rice bran, brown rice bran. And it is gluten-free. How many people have heard of people that need to stay away from gluten? Gluten is a protein that's found in wheat and barley and rye, and it's really very common. There's a serious disease that's totally curable by nutrition called celiac disease, and it's the primary autoimmune disease. And when it's unrecognized for many years, then people develop other autoimmune diseases, and the whole cause is this protein called gluten. We just get a lot too much of it, and it's about 1 out of 100 people, which is, think about how many people live in Elkhart. How many people have this disease and they're never going to be well until it's thought of, and they can get this protein completely out of their diet and get some healing and restoration, and that's what we see with this, immune repair. And there's a third blend that's made of 9 berries and dark purple grapes. Now, what it is very different from conventional multivitamins. It's the whole plant that's been juiced with a very high quality juicer, which gives you basically pre-digestion, so that it's going right into the bloodstream with a very minimal amount of work of the intestine, and you've got all those natural occurring plant nutrients. This is 400 of the known nutrients in 1 apple. Isn't that amazing? Can you see how you could never replicate that in a vitamin form? Because we thought, oh, well, the C and the E are important, and all the rest is just junk nutrition that nature put in there. That was our thinking 50 years ago, and that's where the word vitamin came from. We thought there were 13 things that were important, and the rest was junk. You know, we've learned better, haven't we? Hippocrates said, let food be your medicine. He said that about 400 BC. And he was brilliant, the father of Western medicine, and we now know the science. The very advanced molecular science has shown that's exactly right. When he said food, he meant plant foods. He wasn't talking about chicken and what are those things, McNuggets and things like that. Wouldn't he roll over in his grave if he just saw it? But anyway, we're doing the good stuff here by just learning this. Now, what's really fun is this is 400 nutrients in an apple, but there aren't 400. There are about 10,000 so far known in a single apple. Isn't that marvelous? So if you can picture this, you would need 25 of these sheets to go around the room, and that would represent the nutrient density of an apple. Isn't that amazing? And that's why juicing is so powerful. So we're talking about high quality, all the way vine ripened. One of the huge problems and tragedies of our food supply today is we set it up, for whatever reason, to truck it all in from California for the most part. So that's about 2,000 miles here. You have to pick it green in order to do that. Otherwise, if you pick it vine ripened when it has the most anti-cancer nutrition, it'll be rotten pretty quickly, won't it? And it won't get here. So they pick it very weak, and it never retrieves that power. Artificial ripening doesn't do the same thing. And in fact, most of them are gassed with a special kind of ethylene gas, which turns them from like white strawberries into red. And then we eat them and we think we got a strawberry, but it's just a pale shadow of a strawberry. It's just too weak. It's not the nutrition our grandparents had. And that's why we need so many servings today. Does that make sense? You need more servings of weak food. And the other thing about it is it's tested, every batch, to look for pesticides and herbicides and heavy metals like mercury and radiation even, which you can't see or smell. Every batch is tested for that because you want to test for everything that you can, and also no bacteria, molds, and yeast, so it's safe for people that have a very poor immune system, like people on chemotherapy or people with HIV/AIDS just absolutely thrive with this nutrition. And they're juiced and right away in a cold but not frozen process, and then the water is removed so you don't have spoilage and you don't have the need for preservatives. And so it really has become the most thoroughly researched brand name nutritional or nutraceutical today. This is the body of research published in top medical journals that you cannot buy your way into. It's a very long process of years for each one of these to even happen. This one here is the elite journal of medicine and science for sports and exercise. It's the Journal of the American College of Sports Medicine. And there are actually 2 different publications, different universities that have shown in elite athletes at maximal, not only psychological, but physical stress. This is the only thing that's ever been found to stop the permanent protein damage that they get in their muscles. And that's why the Olympic athletes are now on it officially. The teams of Germany, of Austria, of Switzerland, the French ski team, and it's spreading like that. And no other nutritional has ever been embraced by the Olympics. It's because the science is so strong that you really, ethically get to the point where you know that people need it and they benefit from it. And so all of these different journals are something that you can't buy your way into and you can't fake. And there's the people who did the research have signed their names, and it's their lifelong reputation. So that's peer-reviewed, independent, clinical studies. These are the universities, all the way from Brigham Young, which has one of the finest departments of DNA research, DNA, the blueprint of our cells, to Yale University, my alma mater, at the Research Prevention Center there. And I'll just show you a few of the studies. The University of South Carolina, this is a recent study, has shown that not only do the markers of inflammation in human beings, by the way, all the research is in human beings, not in animals, and not in the test tube, it's in real living human beings. After all, is it not safe to give juice from fruits and vegetables to human beings? Even pregnant moms, it's really good for them, and they have no problem approving those studies because it's totally safe food. The body knows what to do with that, and nothing is high levels. But these markers of inflammation go down, and this is really amazing. Our body doesn't make most of its antioxidants. We have to eat them from the plants, and I'll tell you why that is in just a moment. But one of them that we do get to make is super important. It's called SOD, that stands for superoxide dismutase. And we get to make this. It's an enzyme that's anti-inflammatory. And people using Juice Plus, and this is all compared to placebo, they started to make their SOD better. So they're making better natural anti-inflammatories. Isn't that great? And this is the one that, if any of you know, there's a very famous and beautiful, and somebody I admire greatly, model, very famous model, internationally, she's American, who has a skin product that's expensive, and I'm sure it's a very nice product. And it has SOD in it from a melon in the south of France. It has high levels of SOD. And so they're putting it on their face, which nothing wrong with that. It's a nice idea. But would it not be intelligent to feed your face from your bloodstream? You know what I'm saying? When you feed any cell in your body, you feed every cell in your body. And that's why the skin is the organ where we can see health the fastest. We can see decrease and we can see increase in health. And in fact, we've seen that. There's a new study out of the top skin research unit in Germany, which is one of the top in the world, that has shown that skin in human beings, and they picked a 60-day window, which I think is really brave. I would have picked a longer time than that to study Juice Plus versus placebo, because I've been looking at it and, you know, having it in my bloodstream for 11 years, I've seen a lot of changes. You see a lot of changes at 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, 9 months. They picked 2 months, and it's because a longer study is way more expensive, correct? But in 2 months, 60 days, they saw a really big difference between placebo in skin health. And they could measure it very scientifically. The thickness and the resilience of the skin, the hydration is good in skin, and the capillary flow, the blood flow, increased dramatically in 60 days. So that equates to looking younger and actually being younger physiologically. DNA, there are actually now 4 studies, and our website's just being updated because there are 5 new studies that have just been published. Total of 22 and 10 more in the pipeline, including in pregnancy. But looking at a healthier immune system, less damage to our DNA, that's going to affect how long we get to live and our cancer risk. And then heart disease risk going down. And then I love this. All that damage we talked about, oxidative stress, oxidation tearing you down, big reduction here, study after study. And really beautiful absorption. 11 studies with different populations, different ethnic groups, different universities around the world have shown extremely good absorption. You know, most things that we take for health, there have never been studies done on them, including prenatals, if they get into the bloodstream or not. So you really want to look at that as something proving that it's worth doing. This is the fast food study in the most prestigious journal of cardiology, which is the JACC, Journal of the American College of Cardiology. And I'll just summarize it quickly. There was a group that took all 3 blends, the garden blend, the 10 greens, the fruit blend, which is the orchard, 7 fruits, and the vineyard blend, the 9 dark blue and black and purple berries and grapes. There was a group that took only the fruit and veggie. There's a lot of research on fruit and veggie alone. It does a lot of good for the immune system and for bringing down free radicals. And then there's a group that didn't take any. That's the poor placebo group. No one knows if they're taking the placebo or the fruit and veggie or all 3 blends. The researchers don't know either. That's double-blind, placebo-controlled. They don't know until they break that code at the end. But what they did, these poor people, they fed them hash browns and an egg and a sausage McMuffin. And what they did is they measured the blood flow. It's a really elegant study, University of Maryland, in this arm, well, either arm, and they put the blood pressure cuff on to the high top pressure, systolic pressure, and leave it on for 5 minutes. It's a little uncomfortable, but it's not too bad. and then they remove that blood pressure cuff. Well, in a person that hasn't had that meal, in a normal person, you have the blood vessels are so intelligent, it's going to dilate on purpose with a signaling inside the blood vessel to make up for that time lost. Does that make sense? Make up for compression. And it's not just that it's doing that because it's just an elastic thing, it's an active process. Well, guess what? After you eat this meal, for 4 to 6 hours afterwards, your body can't do that. It's so injured by those shards of glass running through those blood vessels, those high heated fats, which are free radicals, that it's so stunned that it is so toxified that it cannot actually make its own signal, which is nitric oxide, to open up. Now that's why, don't you think, that we have 3-year-olds with the first sign of heart disease? Because they're getting this very toxic load and they're having no protection from salads and greens and tomatoes and stuff at the same meal. I mean, I would say why not just stop it altogether, but at least if you have protection. So guess what? Dr. Plotnick, who's a heart specialist, had already proven that's what happens with this meal. But what he did, he saw the other research on Juice Plus. He decided, let's put one group on all 3 blends, which is the premium package, all 3 blends, that's 25 species, for 28 days, just 2 capsules of each, 2 fruit, 2 veggie, 2 purple berries. It's non-toxic, so you can do more than that, but the studies are all done this way. It's very economical. Another group was just fruits and veggies, and then another group, the poor placebo group. I call them the PP, poor placebo. And what you had, I'll just summarize it quickly for you, the group that took placebo had this tremendous constriction for 4 to 6 hours. The group that took fruit and veggies had 66% less of that, so 66% better protection of their blood vessels. That's really good, wouldn't you say? And then the group that took all 3 had 99% protection. Just tremendous synergistic protection, and that's why all 3 are really recommended. Brand new study of what happens to your oxidized LDL, which is really an ugly picture. That's what causes heart disease and stroke, especially in smokers and also people with diabetes. And they showed a huge protection. These people's free radicals made of these toxic lipids or toxic fats went way down dramatically. And it just goes on. This is the skin study. This will be presented on the 15th of October in Nashville, Tennessee, to a group of doctors and nurses for a professional conference. And the lead researcher, Dr. De Spirit, who is from Germany, she will be presenting this paper. It's really exciting stuff. So bottom line, what you have with the research, and that's why I fell in love with this, besides the point that it just flat out works to help people and it's safe, that this is what is proven to happen, all these things we've talked about. And these are the continuing studies. The biggest cause of inflammation in the human race is periodontal disease. Disease of the gums. And the reason why that is because you basically have bone, which is our teeth, sticking through skin, which is our gums. If you had a broken bone that stuck through the skin, that would be a giant emergency, because what's going to happen, besides pain and disability, is infection, correct? Like, it will kill you if it's not attended to. That infection will kill you. So this is what our body has to deal with every day from the time we erupt our teeth, is the gums are broken through by the teeth, correct? And that's where your immune system has to do battle every second of every day. You ever notice that little babies with no teeth have really sweet breath? Because they don't have this giant infection problem going on. And as soon as we have teeth, we've got all kinds of, the bacteria go nuts, and every 24 hours they build little castles for themselves, and that's why we try to brush and floss every 24 hours, because the stuff going on there is just amazing, it's shocking. And what happens is that it causes heart disease and inflammation through your whole body. If one part of your body is inflamed and doing battle, the whole body is inflamed and doing battle. And the first of those studies, there are 3 studies, is already done, showing that pocket depth, where you've got that loss, is already going up. The attachment is higher, less inflammation, the bleeding stops. And it's just, really nice stuff to see over and over again. It's been noticed for 18 years that Juice Plus has been out there, that this is what happens, but now it's proven what happens. So all of these things are indicators that something special is going on. All the research can be viewed at the website of, if whoever invited you here cares about you. If they're here with you, ask them. If they're not here, call and ask them. But they have all the research that you can read, every word of it, at their web link, all of the papers. And then these are some books. We're short on time, and I'm going to just just go a couple of them. For people that like to read, these are third-party validation of what we're talking about. Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn has written an incredible book, Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease with Nutrition. And if you want to see this in a marvelous form, there are 2 new documentaries. I like to learn by documentaries. It's faster than reading, and they're powerful. One of them, and they're both available online, one of them is called Forks Over Knives, like forks and knives that you eat with. So Forks Over Knives is a powerful new documentary that's, you can get it at Amazon.com. I think it's very inexpensive. It showed at major cities this summer, absolutely rave reviews, and he is one of the many doctors featured in it. We're talking totally reversing heart disease with nutrition without drugs or surgery. And I'm not saying there's never a time for drugs and surgery, but we're at a point now where we're on the losing end of this battle, and if you don't incorporate this, you're not going to have a good outcome. The China study by Dr. Colin Campbell is one of the greatest landmark pieces of nutrition, and again, he is covered in that movie, Forks Over Knives. The other documentary, where both of them are, was just done by Dr. Sanjay Gupta on CNN, and it was preempted by Libya, and then the next week it was prevented by Hurricane Irene. So the good part of that is you can see it with no ads and for free anytime you want. If you just go to CNN.com and type in its exact title, you'll instantly pop up. The exact title is The Last Heart Attack. 3 words, The Last Heart Attack. And they're talking about heart disease does not have to happen. Really great stuff. The great Michael Pollan, who's a professor at UC Berkeley, anything written by him is amazing, and this one is called In Defense of Food. It talks about the politics as well as the economics and our agrarian situation. And then this is just a great book for families, Disease-Proof Your Child by Dr. Joel Furman, who's an MD. And look at this quote. Of our 2-year-olds in America, 98% of their nutrition is not natural plant-based nutrition. And are we at all puzzled by the epidemic of learning disorders and behavior problems that we're having? This is where it stems from. Anti-Cancer, A New Way of Life is a fabulous book by a cancer survivor who has many degrees as well. And now, I just want to go back here just a second. Why are plants so important? Just a last little synopsis here. Anybody here ever raised tomato plants or seen tomato plants growing? They grow in the full sun, yes? This is so powerful. I hope you enjoy this. So, if you were to sit with your tomato plant and just do some work for one day, just one, let's say 8 hours, and you're sitting there and the tomato plant's growing and making things happen, and you're sitting there, what would happen to you, your skin in particular? You would get a sunburn, and it would be a blistering sunburn, and that's a 2nd-degree burn. It would hurt. It is not good for you because that's radiation damage and you're raising your risk of skin cancer. So I don't recommend doing that. But you know that that's what would happen, correct? Now, why, this is the great point, why does the tomato plant not blister? Because it is manufacturing its own pharmacy of thousands of antioxidants which soak up the radiation damage. If you think about it, we're burning the fuel that plants make for us, which is very awesome, but plants are burning something much more dangerous, which is sunlight. They're playing with fire every moment of their lives. So they are loaded with the colors, are they not? Purples, reds, greens, yellows, oranges, and those are the markers of their pharmacy, and each one has a different spectrum. And we were designed to soak up our damage of our free radical production because we have to breathe, we have to burn our fuel, we have to make smoke, which is antioxidants. We were designed to have it soaked up, primarily, most of it, by eating the plants with their pharmacy. Does that make sense? And that is why the further we get away from eating them, the sicker we are. Because there's no way to compensate. The only way to compensate is a diet very rich in fruits and vegetables. So I think it's all about the next generation for all of us. That's our oldest son and his wife. This is their baby, with permission that she had toxemia pregnancy. My daughter-in-law was not protected in this way during pregnancy and had preeclampsia, very severe. Had to be saved, both of them, by emergency C-section. They had great care down in Indianapolis, and the baby weighed 1 pound and 6 ounces, and that is her father's wedding ring right there. Her daddy's wedding ring. She has done really well. That's a month later in the ICU. That's my son's hand. That's the nurse's hands in the blue gloves. And she's getting her food there, because they're not strong enough to do anything about getting their food for a long time. And that's mommy's milk, which is what saves their lives. That's why they do so well today. The care is phenomenal, and all of those babies get breast milk, all of them, because that's how you get to live. Anything else won't do. And there's 9 months old, and she's doing great. She's 2 now. And to conclude, look at this. This is a great-grandmother in Hawaii, in Hawaiian culture, and her great-granddaughter. You know, I think they look about the same in terms of life force, energy, don't you think, in terms of zest of life? And, you know, this is possible. How do you see yourself? This is my little niece who was adopted from an orphanage in Vietnam, and her mom could never find enough food. She was starving during her pregnancy. And this little one is still paying for that, which is basically not enough food to grow a brain that works really perfectly. She's amazing. She's going to be awesome, but she really struggles with reading and with math. And you know, this is the epigenetics. Her genes were fine. She didn't have the nutrients to switch on the right genes at the right time. So she's going to have to pay for that the rest of her life, but fortunately she's got my brother and his wife and a wonderful home that loves her, and we just adore her. And that's really the point, is loving life, doing what we're here to do, and really appreciating it. So that's what I have to share. We do have a free children's program where all of the kids from age 4 through 18 or college students, if they're full-time undergraduates, if a parent or grandparent or loved one in their family starts on Juice Plus, they may add a child for 3 years as a gift for free. And I don't know any company that does that, but this one, it's our Juice Plus Children's Research Foundation. The only thing they ask in return is a wonderful little questionnaire. It takes about 10 minutes. It's just 3 times the first year and once a year after that. And it looks at the parent, how they're doing, and the child. So we're getting 2 sets of data. And guess what? At the end of 3 years of being consistent, the amount of medication used by these kids, anybody want to guess how much of a decrease? Like 10%, 50%? Just a wild guess? Less medication? 99%. It's 70% decreased, but that's 70% less medication, and that includes the over-the-counter, like allergy meds and so forth, and it includes all the prescription meds, whether it's antibiotics, ADD meds, you name it. So we're pretty secure that we're doing something good. And that's what we're up to. We're going to close this out, and some of us are going to stay after. Whoever wants is welcome to. I'm going to stay. George, we're going to have 6 of us who are Juice Plus reps from the area, Elkhart, South Bend, Mishawaka, Granger, are going to share why we were attracted to this company and the history of the company. And a lot of people like to know who's making what they're thinking about using for their health or what they're already taking for their health. And we are looking for people that want to share about our nonprofit foundation and looking for something they can be aligned with to make a difference in the wellness movement, because we really are about making a difference with wellness throughout our whole country. So I want to thank you so much. See the person who invited you, because they really care about you. That's why you were invited. And I just appreciate your attention and wish you a beginning of a healthy autumn season. Thank you so much. I should have put my hand up.